Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live discussion about Mr. Robot Season 2. And I'm joined here by Akton Tamko, here to talk about Mr. Robot. So if you just want to say hello, Akton.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching all of my reviews this year for Season 2. And thanks for coming to our discussion. I'm looking forward to talking about Season 2.
Yeah, so it's we were just talking about a bit before about when we did a discussion for the first half of season 2. So we're gonna try to focus more on the second half, but I do want to talk about season 2 overall as a whole. But it seemed like in our initial discussion, we were pretty much very like-minded on the season. Now, judging by our separate reviews, it seems like we might have very different opinions. So it'd be good to get into that a bit. So I want to start with, what are your feelings of season 2 overall, like as a whole, the entirety of season 2? Some real quick thoughts on season 2.
So yeah, there's definitely going to be some disagreements based on what you said in your review, because I think I liked it a lot better than you did. I thought that while it wasn't perfect and there some aspects of it that were a little disappointing, some things that could have been better. Overall, I was satisfied with it. We'll get into the prison thing a little later. I was okay with that. I mean, overall, I felt good about season 2. I feel like it was an improvement over season 1, me personally, and in many regards. I think it could still get better in season 3, but I thought overall it was a success. So I like season 2, but that's me.
Oh, no, that's fair. I mean, I can see that point of view. In fact, I kind of want to feel that way. And maybe I'm just having like this initial disappointment that I'll slowly get over. Maybe I will think better of season 2 down the line, because I did notice when I was rewatching, because I usually rewatch these episodes over and over again as I'm typing out my reviews, as I'm reviewing. And so I noticed, so my initial statement is usually more negative, and when I get to the end of the video, I'm more positive, because after the first viewing of the episode, I was like really disappointed. But after watching it over and over again, I was like, oh, once I accept the fact that we're not going to get all these revelations, I kind of enjoyed it more. But still, season 2 as a whole, I still think it feels like there wasn't enough meat to it. It feels like it was purposely drawn out for too long. Like season 1, I think I heard another reviewer say this, and I totally agree with it, where season 1 felt more self-contained, where season 2 felt more like a commercial for season 3. Or, I mean, that is probably not fair, because there were a lot of good things about season 2, but it did feel like it wasn't as self-contained, like it was more dependent on, oh, wait till we get to season 3, it's going to be awesome. At least that's how I felt about it.
Well, yeah, we'll get into that as we go on. I definitely disagree with that, but we'll talk about it. Yeah, I disagree with that, but we'll talk about it as we go on. Let's say hi to. It's funny, 2 people we see in the chat. Mark and I were talking beforehand that, well, we know these 2 people will definitely be in the chat. There may not be anybody else, but we know these 2 guys will be there. Hello, Mitch Corbin and Cardinal Doomsday. Thanks for joining us in the chat. We anticipated your arrival. Also, let me know on my screen what I'm looking at. I see Mark the whole time, so please make sure that let me know if you don't see me, if you're only hearing me, because we might have to do it manually if you're not seeing me.
I'm watching the live feedback. I see you. On the YouTube live feedback.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm not watching that. I just have the chat in so okay, so you do see me. Okay, that's good. All right, so let's get going.
All right, yeah. Okay, so I want to start with let's do the favorites, least favorites things. I always like starting with that. So, what were your favorite and least favorite moments of season 2?
So, favorites, I mean, probably the things that I said in the first half still stand. So, I still like and nothing has changed. So I still like the Elliot versus Mr. Robot scenes early on. Yeah, and I like so for the second half of the season, I love the. I actually really love the return of Tyrell and the way that played out. I loved the return of the battle between Mr. Robot and Elliot realizing that basically Mr. Robot has been manipulating him this whole time, and Elliot has just been completely out of the loop. And I loved the Elliot's in the finale. I loved him just being so unsure of reality. I would not have loved it if it turned out that they were going to say Tyrell was fake or was in Elliot's head. And the only possibility would be that the real Tyrell was killed, and then this Tyrell is in Elliot's head, because we saw on the big board Tyrell's face clearly there, and Elliot had nothing to do with that. So, so that did make me a little nervous. However, since it turned out the way it did, I actually loved how Elliot was so sure that his reality was false, and then it turns out he was wrong, and he gets shot, and that just shows that Elliot just his reality in the line between reality and fantasy is so skewed that he can't even tell the difference anymore. So even when something is actually real, he thinks it's fake. So I love that, and I love also that we got White Rose and Philip Price a lot more this season. I love both of those characters and both the actors who play them. And I'm really, really intrigued by that whole storyline. There's a lot of mystery to it, but I'm really intrigued by it. And this is going to be the opposite of what you said, but I love the Angela storyline this year. So that's the complete opposite of what you said. Yeah. This is going to be we're going to get into that. I'll talk about why. I can't believe you said that was the least favorite one. That this was the Tyrell Wellick version of last season. Joanna Wellick. If we want to get into dislike, that'll be number one for me, the Joanna Wellick. But
all right, well, let me get into my favorite moments first. So like I said in the first half of the season, the moment where we get the flashback where Elliot was talking to Darlene. They first came up with the idea of F Society. That's still my favorite moment of the entire season. I absolutely loved it. But getting into the later half of the season, I also loved the reveal of the prison, especially like in episode 9 when they showed actually the backstory of how he was, arrested for stealing that guy's dog and whatever, because we all knew that was the case, and we finally got the revelation of who was knocking at the door in season 1. It still irritated me a little bit that they waited till episode 9 to resolve the cliffhanger of season 1, but it was satisfying, and I did like it, and I loved just seeing him go into prison and see all the pieces fall into place. So that was another moment I absolutely loved, and I absolutely loved the stuff with Elliot and Mr. Robot, like switching places, how they had the quick editing in episode 9 as well. Because I'm still totally on board with my theory about that's Elliot reinserting control over himself and Mr. Robot losing control. And I love that aspect of it. And I actually think I was a bit disappointed that wasn't explored more in the finale, which is one of the things I had with the finale, but getting to dislikes later. And the other thing I really loved, of course, was the shootout was really intense. Like, I think the one with Cisco and Darlene, that was even more intense than the China one, and the way it was shot all in the wide shot was awesome. And of course I love the scene where DiPiero was taking Darlene to see the whiteboard in the finale. I thought that was awesome. Okay, so
wait, yeah, I just want to add, I agree with everything you said there, but the DiPiero and Darlene, just that whole dynamic there in the final episode, and I think that's going to continue on. We're going to talk later about what we look forward to in season 3, but that's one thing I'm looking forward to is those two characters. I really love seeing them on screen together and the dynamic. So, and then the big board reveal was, of course, pretty cool too. So yeah,
definitely agree with you there. Okay, so what were some of your least favorite moments of season 2? Like particular moments.
Yeah, particular. Well, I mean, everything to do with the Joanna Wellick storyline. Now, in retrospect, I mean, when it was happening, though, I didn't necessarily feel that way because I was like waiting to see where this was leading. I assumed this tied into. I mean, I had high hopes. Maybe it ties into Dark Army and all this other crazy stuff, but it was like at least it ties into Tyrell Wellick's disappearance, which is like the big mystery all through the season that everybody wanted to know what happened to Tyrell Wellick. And so if Joanna Wellick tied into that, then it would have been fine. So as I'm watching the episodes, I didn't hate it. I wanted to see where it was leading. Now where I see where it led, now the whole thing sucks. Like I feel like it was a colossal waste of time. Like what? I mean, maybe they'll tie it together somehow in season 3, I guess. I mean, but I'm just. But I feel like for something like that, you can't wait until season 3. I want that to be tied into something meaningful now. Like if otherwise, I feel like all through this season, I just wasted my time. Like, why do I give a crap about Joanna trying to get Scott Knowles arrested? That has nothing to do with the Dark Army. That has nothing to do with Tyrell. And by the way, I heard somebody say that, well, why is she doing that? Because that doesn't really help Tyrell get off of 5'9". I got the impression that she's doing it not to get Tyrell off the murder necessarily, but to get Scott Knowles. Like it's just totally, directed towards Scott Knowles. She wants to get him. And like, why do I give a fuck about that? I don't care. Like, it has nothing to do with anything I'm interested in this show. So that would be my number one dislike. I'm sure there's other things too. As you mentioned some things, I might agree with some of them, but that's just like what's really sticks out in my head that I really just can't stand about the second season.
Yeah, I'm not as negative on that as you, and we'll get into that later on when we talk more about Joanna's storyline. But for me, the least favorite moments of the season, again, like what I said in the first half, the chess match. I got to mention the chess match because that's still by far, that's just a repeat of what we've already seen. It was totally
and I agree. I definitely agree with that. We had talked about that in our first half review as well, but I definitely agree with that one.
And also the whole Alf montage thing, like it was cute, but it was kind of, again, I've seen stuff like that before, and I think they're trying too hard, and it came off as pretentious. And of course, the main thing, it was unnecessary. It was just another way to just drag things out, and that's what really bothered me about the season. So most of the other scenes or moments or things that I felt were unnecessary and drag things out, such as, especially, sorry. It's the DiPiero talking to her little Alexa computer, especially the one in the finale. That scene enraged me because it was so pointless. It was like, to me, it was the very definition of filler. It did not need to be there, and it was just wasting our time. And yeah, I think that's it for those are the only like really strong moments that really bothered me.
And I agree with the Deep Hero stuff. I knew I would think of something else when you started talking. And I'm seeing in the chat here, Mitch Corbett said favorite Leon, least favorite Tyrell's wife. So he agrees with me on the least favorite, but that's a good favorite that I forgot to mention. I like Leon this season. I like the Leon scenes.
Oh, so yeah, and I did want to touch on something that I saw in the chat earlier. Mitch Corbin saying I want season 3 to be it. However, I've heard that Sam Esmail has a 5-year plan for the show. Like someone said it was 4 or 5, but basically has an outline for the show where he knows he wants to take it. So it's going to be 4 or 5 seasons, and because it's doing so well, I'm sure it's going to be 5.
I had actually heard 4, but I didn't know. I mean, it was just some random person on Reddit who said 4.
Oh,
so
right.
I didn't know if that was or any truth to it, but I wasn't sure if they had decided that.
Yeah,
so, 4 or 5 to me will probably. I think 4 sounds like it would be better. 5 would be really stretching it, but I don't know. We'll see.
Oh yeah, and Mitch brings up the Adderall, and that's another of my favorite moments is the whole Adderall scene where he's like, I have multiple versions of him.
Yeah.
That was really awesome.
Yeah, that was really cool too. But we did a first half of the season review, and we talked about some of our favorite moments. So I'm trying to focus more on the second half of the season. But because I think I'm sure I mentioned that when we did our first half of the season, because that was that was definitely one of my favorite moments for sure.
Okay, so what was your favorite and least favorite episode? So choosing one episode of the season to be your favorite and least favorite.
I'm gonna pass. I can't.
You're gonna pass?
I don't know. I'd have to really. There's not one that sticks out as the absolute favorite episode, and one that sticks out as my probably the least favorite. I'd probably have to go with episode 4.
Okay.
I think with the whole chess match thing, that would probably be least favorite. But favorite, there are several episodes that I liked a lot. So which one is my absolute favorite? I don't know. I'd have to like go back and rewatch them, think about it. I don't know. But I can say least favorite. I would probably go with 4. I mean, if you want me to list some of my favorites, I love I liked episode 10. I liked episode 8. The one without Elliot in it, surprisingly, was good.
I think that's an underrated episode. I hear a lot of people hating on that episode. I thought that episode was great.
Episode. I love that episode. The very first episode, not part 2, not the second episode, but the first hour I enjoyed, and episode 3 I enjoyed. So yeah, there's quite a bit of episodes. And then the finale you have to kind of take as a whole. I mean, it was I can't say that either half of the finale was one of my favorites, but if you take it as a whole, I like it a lot better. But yeah, it's hard for me right now to say. In episode 7, in retrospect, I remember when I did my review for episode 7, I was like, oh, I have to see how things turn out before I know how I feel about it. But I actually, in retrospect, I do like that one too. Don't know if this is my favorite, but so I don't have one right now that stands out for me.
Well, see, I have a very clear favorite and least favorite, which is why I asked that. But overall, like episodes 7, 8, and 9 were my favorites of the season. And that's when I think the show was at its stride. And I think the follow-ups 10, 11, 12 were good as 2, but they weren't as good to me as those. And out of them, I think episode 9, sort of blanking on the name of it, but that was my favorite. I
think I forgot to mention episode 9. I like that.
Yeah. But I talked about some moments that were in it earlier, like the big prison reveal and the Mr. Robot and Elliot switching places, and finally seeing Elliot finally interact with Darlene again, and them and Elliot coming to realize that everything was so fucked up while he's hiding in a cage. I loved that. I thought it was great. And least favorite episode, definitely episode 6, the whole Alf thing, which I've already touched on a bit. But yeah, that felt like the most unnecessary episode out of all of them. Like, we didn't need it. If they took it out of the season would have been fine.
Yeah, I didn't hate the Alf thing as much as you did. I just thought it went on too long. Like, I thought they could have had it. Like, it was the actual length of a real sitcom. When you count for commercials. So it was. They were trying to make it like the actual length of an actual sitcom, which was way too much. Like, if it had been 5 minutes, I would have been much better with it. But so I didn't.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you there.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't hate it as much as you did, but I wouldn't rank it among my favorites either. For sure.
Cool. All right. Cool. So let's go ahead and move on. So I want to do some follow-up to the other discussion we did in the first half, because we talked about some things about some of our expectations on the second half of season 2, but now we have seen it, sort of want to follow up on how we feel about it. And again, we sort of touched on it, and maybe we can get more into some of our disagreements here. But was the payoff worth all the setup? And I think we'll have different answers on this, because in our first video, we were asking, like, the payoff better be good because they're spending all this time setting up. So we'll start with you. What do you think? Was the payoff worth all this setup?
Yes, to me it was, because of course we didn't get answers to everything, but if you were expecting to get answers to everything, your expectations were too high. I never expected to get answers to the White Rose and Philip Price stuff and the what's the importance of the plant and all that stuff. I figured that's season 3 stuff. I never expected all those answers. I had a very limited amount of answers that I really needed, and I felt like I got them. And I liked, again, the very first scene, I believe it was the very first scene of the season, the flashback at the arcade with the popcorn gun. Was that the first scene in the season?
Yeah, it was one of them. Yeah. It was, I think it might have been the very first, but it was at the very beginning of that first episode. Yeah.
Yeah. We got, I felt like it went full circle because at the very end of the season, we got the payoff for that. And it wasn't what some people thought, that he killed Tyrell. It was that he told Tyrell that if anybody tries to stop our plan, even if it's me, you got to shoot him. And I like that. And so I feel like, I mean, that's where we started, and we got at the very beginning, and then we got payoff for that at the very end. So I feel like there's a very clear beginning, very clear end. And we can get into this a little more later, but when you said in your review that the whole thing with Elliot and Mr. Robot in the first half of the season was a complete waste of time, I think in all the reviews that you and I have ever done, we always usually agree on a lot of stuff, but that stands out to me as probably the statement you've ever said that I couldn't possibly disagree with more.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't even understand how you could say that was a waste of time. I think that was, I mean, we can get into it a little bit more before we get into the arguments, but I definitely, to me, to watch the journey of Elliot's battle with Mr. Robot, because it's at the end of season 1, he was just beginning to discover that Mr. Robot existed and dealing with it. So then we go into season 2, and it's now coping with this knowledge that he has. And first he's trying to fight it off. Then he goes into, oh no, we're best friends and all that. And then he finds out at the end that the whole thing about him being best friends and all that was just Mr. Robot was playing him the whole time. The whole thing with the femtocell was Mr. Robot's idea. Mr. Robot was manipulating Elliot. It was all part of his larger plan. And Mr. Robot arranged somehow, we don't really know how, but he somehow arranged for the Dark Army to get them out of prison. So, I mean, Mr. Robot was in control the whole time, and Elliot had no idea. So Elliot coming to this realization at the end of the season was great payoff, and it made everything worth it in the first half of the season. So overall, yes, I thought there was good payoff. I could have had a little bit more than what we got. I would have liked to have seen some actual scenes from those 3 missing days. I won't lie about that. I definitely would have. I think we could have gotten a little more. Like I wasn't blown away by the finale. Like my mind is blown. Oh my God, this is all my expectations. So I would definitely say there were some things that were lacking. But if you want to get my overall opinion, I do think that there was payoff. Now you can say your opposing point of view.
Well, I'm not going to say that there wasn't payoff. I think that there definitely was payoff. I think the issue is that there was too much setup. And this is the issue like Lost and other shows have, is when you have way too much setup. And we kind of talked about this in the first half of the season, our discussion, as that when you have so much payoff setup, the payoff needs to be outstanding. And I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like the payoff, like the thing with like the whole Elliot and Mr. Robot thing being a colossal waste of time. I think I feel that way because it was so long. If it was like 1 or 2 episodes, I might say it was worth it. But like to me in episode 9, when they were playing on the dynamic of Mr. Robot and Elliot, I thought, oh, they're making it worth it. It's all worthwhile. And I think that statement about it being colossal waste of time is a bit hyperbole, because I was a bit disappointed because it didn't follow through on that particular dynamic as much as I would hope. But I do take your point about there being the, starting with the gun and then having Mr. Robot was playing him the whole time. But I don't know. I still think that dragged on for too long and the payoff wasn't as satisfying to me. And I just think, like, I don't know, in general, it doesn't seem like season 2 was, again, getting back to what I was saying, it was self-contained, that a lot of it is just, just wait for season 3, and so you said we got a lot of answers this season, which is true, but to me, it's like a lot of the stuff that the finale answered were questions I weren't expecting to be answered in season 3, like stuff I didn't really, like what happened to Mobley and Trenton, and what Joanna was up to, what was the deal with the gifts. Like, I wouldn't have mind if they pushed those off to season 3. To me, the main thing I was a bit disappointed they didn't touch on more was what happened in those 3 missing days. I mean, we learned about stage 2, so they kind of touched on it, but I still get the idea. We haven't actually seen flashbacks to it, so I still get the feeling that they're still withholding things that from season 1, and to me, that's what sort of bothers me the most. So, just to answer the question, I would say that I don't think the payoff was particularly satisfying, just because there was too much setup.
Unlike one of your favorite shows of all time, Lost, which had 6 seasons and still didn't pay off some things from season 1. I get your point, but I mean, I'm just kind of used to these anthology series. I feel like I said in my review, I feel like going back and seeing that scene with Elliot and Tyrell in the car, which we had previously seen as Mr. Robot, as Christian Slater in the car. To me, even though I still don't really quite get it, I still feel like that's an indication they kind of have a plan. So I'm glad to hear that he has a 4 or 5 season plan, that he knows what he's doing. Because I feel like when it's all said and done, we are going to get it all. And maybe it is true that this could be something that could probably be told in less time than they're going to take to tell it. So maybe it could be a 2-3 season show, but 2-3 season shows don't make money. So,
we'll see. The thing is, I felt season 2, and I didn't feel this way about season 1. I did think it did dip in quality mid-season. You know how much I can't stand the Fernando storyline.
Yeah.
But other than that, I thought season 1 felt like a complete season more so than season 2, which I felt could have been told in 4 or 5 episodes. The amount of information. It just seems like it talked about the Alf thing and the period talking to Siri. All that could have went. That was just a way to drag it out even longer, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to say hi to a couple people in the chat. I don't know how to pronounce your name, Kerbu. One of the regular, he's become a regular commenter in my Mr. Robot reviews. Yeah. So welcome. And iChief, I don't recognize your name, but thanks for coming. And you say, iChief says, I really hope there's not 10 seasons. Let's keep it to 6. What we were talking about earlier, probably before you got here, iChief, is that 4 or 5 seasons is what has been discussed. We're thinking it's probably going to be 5. And yeah, I think that should be the max. So I do kind of, Mark, get see what you're saying, but I guess I kind of expect this an anthology series. So I feel like season 2 did have a clear beginning and middle and end, even if a lot of it is just wait for season 3, but but it is. And season 1 didn't have that as much because when they made the episodes, they didn't know if there was going to be a season 2. They had no idea what the reception was going to be. So they made it so that it could be a self-standing unit if it needed to be, it totally, yeah. It's
just the thing is, in my opinion, when you compare it to even shows like Lost, which is notorious for being slow and taking its time to disseminate information, in my opinion, Mr. Robot is even slower. When I look at Lost, I think you got more information every episode than you did with Mr. Robot.
Well, we'll have to agree and disagree. Lost had a lot of episodes that had nothing to do with the main mythology. Especially in the earlier seasons. The third season, even though third season Lost has a lot of my favorite episodes, there are also a lot of episodes in that season where they're just clearly trying to drag it out and they're just complete wastes of time. And I don't think Mr. Robot has touched that. I think this, but that's, we'll agree to disagree on that.
Nah, I don't know. Yeah, okay. Well, let's just move on to another follow up to our first half of the season discussion. Is because we talked about at this point we didn't know if the prison or mental institutions. I think at this stage both of us has ruled out the possibility that he was in a prison, thought he was in a mental institution. But then, like this was in episode 6, and we were predicting this might be revealed in like episode 8 or 9. I think you said 8, I said 9, and it happened to be revealed in the very next episode, episode 7. And I remember you expressed some feeling dubious about this reveal, if it is indeed he's in the prison, if would it be worth it? So what's your feelings now that everything's been revealed?
Yeah.
Were you satisfied with this revelation?
Yeah, when it first happened, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Let me see how things turn out later. Because my fear was that it was just like, there was no point to it other than, ooh, look, we fooled you. And I do think there's a little bit to that. Like, I do think that there was definitely like a very calculated, oh, we're going to fool them with this one. Like, we're going to, that kind of thing. But when after really digesting it and really think about, well, what were the alternatives? One alternative would be to just straight up show Elliot in prison. He's in prison, that's it. Or to just straight up have him be in his mom's house and there is no prison. He's just at his mom's house. That would be the two alternatives. When I think about it, I think about what they did is actually better than either of those alternatives. So it took me a little while to really like digest it and warm up to it, but like I can't think of what they could have done that would have been better. So I actually, and I do agree with you about the episode 9 thing, how they went back and just showed us in the beginning, I think 7 or 8 minutes, like a little quick recap, and Elliot at the end says, "So that's it. That's all you missed." So I did like how they did that. So it did take me a little bit of time to warm up to it, but I do feel overall pretty good about, the prison thing and that it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was warm on it more than you from the get-go. Like from the very beginning, once it was revealed, I was like, I would have actually at that stage, I would have been really pissed off if they hadn't revealed something like that. So I was really happy with the way they did it. And the other thing about that was the whole Ray storyline, because we were talking about how that could have been like just an aside and kind of not relevant to the main plot, and it totally was. It was totally irrelevant. It was another thing, if you look back on it, it was just there to take up time, to fill space, to give something Elliot to do while he was in prison. And so I do see it as filler, but it was for filler. It was interesting. Like it was, again, it wasn't nearly as bad as the Fernando storyline, which I can't understate. Like to me, that's the worst moment in TV ever. But anyway,
well, so to me, yeah, season 3 finale of Fringe has that for me. But I don't disagree with you. Yeah, it's definitely up there. Like, but yeah, go on. Yeah, I definitely hate it too. So
yeah, but what do you feel about the Ray storyline then? Do you agree that it was kind of a waste of time, but it was okay for what it was?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that assessment of it. I don't think that it was really necessary, but Craig Robinson, the actor, did a great job, and Ray was a really interesting character. So I wouldn't say waste of time is not necessarily the phrase that I would use, because I did. There were things I enjoyed about it, but was it necessary? Not. I mean, no. You could have taken the Ray stuff out. It would have been fine. Yeah. So. Yeah, so I kind of agree. It was definitely better than the Fernando Vera stuff from last season, but it was also similar in that it wasn't really necessary to moving the main story forward. So,
It didn't really do that much for Elliot's character either. I mean, all the Mr. Robot Elliot scenes in prison, those actually were, necessary for his character, if not went on too long. But the Ray stuff kind of didn't seem necessary even for his character.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
And also the resolution to it seemed kind of like lackluster. Like, oh, Ray just gives up. Okay, here you got me, Elliot. It seemed like, well, that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah. That I agree with that one for sure. Cardinal Doomsday says the Ray story took too long. Yeah. I mean, it probably didn't even need to be there at all, honestly, except that, I mean, the acting was good and the character was really interesting, but, as far as moving the story forward, if it wasn't there, we wouldn't be going, oh, what that story really needs is like Craig Robinson in there playing this really interesting. I mean, nobody would be saying that. So you could have taken it out and we wouldn't have, we wouldn't feel like anything was missing.
Yeah. And I also heard that the whole storyline was very Shawshank Redemption-esque. Like having the warden. Yeah.
It was. It definitely was. Yeah. I that's actually, in fact, the first thing I thought of as soon as I suspected that Ray might be the warden, and then definitely when it was confirmed he was the warden, I was like, yeah, definitely Shawshank Redemption is what I thought of.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like I didn't hate that storyline. It wasn't horrible, but again, when I look at the season overall, I see stuff like that and it makes me think there's a lot of filler. But so let's move on to what was the other thing I wanted to touch? Oh, the Tyrell. This is a good thing I wanted to touch on, the Tyrell Wellick relation, because that's another thing they've been setting up and teasing all seasons. Where is Tyrell? And so we talked about this in our first discussion. The revelation better be good. And I think you've already touched on this a little bit. And I'm going to say for me that I actually agree that I thought the payoff for Tyrell was totally worth it. I think all the setup actually totally makes sense when we find out where he actually was. Yeah. So what, yeah. Do you have any more?
Well, I mean, I would say to anybody who says that, we went too long without Tyrell, or the payoff wasn't worth it, then what would you have wanted? Do you want Tyrell to appear in episode 5 or 6, or what? I mean, what's he going to do all of that time? And are we supposed to see scenes of what Tyrell is doing? To me, that would have been anticlimactic. I think it's better to the way that they did it, to leave it as a question, even though I was 99.99% sure that Tyrell was real, and if my 0.1 or 0.001% chance was wrong, I would have been pissed and quit the show because that would have been stupid. Even though, despite that fact, I mean, the way that they, they're really playing, the writers are really playing with Elliot's head, the way that he can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy anymore. Not just that he thinks fantasy is real, but he thinks reality is fantasy. So I loved how they did that. If you had Tyrell come in earlier, you lose that. You lose your ability to do that and pull that off. And so, yeah, they did it just the way that they needed to do it. And I never at any point in the season felt that, we need to see Tyrell right now. What's taking him so long? Like, I heard a lot of people expressing that opinion. Yeah, and I'm like, so in retrospect, what would you have had Tyrell do all of that time? If we had seen what he was doing, like back in episode 4, 5, 6, or whatever, that would have been anticlimactic. It would have taken away from the ending. So I thought that they did that just right.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is that the whole season should have been like 6 episodes. But if they are going to stretch it out like that, I do think that was the right point in the storyline for Tyrell to come in. Like, if he had come in any earlier in that storyline, then it would have been a waste. And the other thing is that Tyrell was like the worst part of season 1. Like, he hated that. And season 2, he's actually good. They actually made him an interesting character, and they sort of actually almost justified all that crazy shit that we saw of him in season 1. So I was actually really impressed with what they did with Tyrell. And I was also really impressed. Like, you say, like, you would have like hated and quit the show or been outraged if Tyrell was just the figment in Elliot's mind. And I don't know, I feel that way if they would have said like Tyrell was the figment in Elliot's mind the whole entire time. There is no Tyrell, then I would feel that way. But if he was like, if they said that Mr. Robot killed Tyrell and he's a figment, like, I wouldn't like that, but I wouldn't like be so outraged by it. But I am glad that they didn't go that way, but I actually really love the way that they played with not just Elliot, but with me, because they actually had me. Like, I was totally convinced that Tyrell was real, but they actually had me question myself when Tyrell was holding the gun at Elliot, because it was so reminiscent of Mr. Robot shooting Elliot in the earlier season. It actually had me questioning whether or not Tyrell was real, and I love that. And I love that he was real.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And it had me fooled too, but except I was more like, no, please don't tell me they're doing it. As I said in my review, I was like, oh, whew, it's just our main character bleeding to death on the floor. That's it. What a relief. But yeah. I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but I'm watching the chat, and I'm just dying to address something.
Okay, sure. I was going to address it too, so go ahead.
Because Mitch Corbin, how did Tyrell know to call Angela? You actually asked that in a comment on my video too, and I responded to it. I don't know if you saw it, but to me, I took my takeaway from that is, Angela has a line in there where she says, "Yes, they told me you were going to call." So my takeaway from that was Tyrell calls up the Dark Army, whoever his Dark Army contact is, in a panic. "Oh my God, I shot Elliot. What am I going to do?" And the guy was like, "Oh, calm down. We'll get it taken care of." Then they made a separate call to Angela. "Okay, we're going to have Tyrell call you, and this is what has happened. So you're going to take care of it." So there was like an in between. So Tyrell called up a dude from the Dark Army. Then that dude called up Angela, and then they hooked them up together. That's how I took it. And I think Angela's line, "They told me you were calling," kind of indicates that. So that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, that was my thought too. Yeah, that was my initial thought. But there was also something else concerning Tyrell that I saw in your video that I wanted to address, is that, and how we got the flashback at the start of the finale of the season 1 scene, but actually seeing Elliot. And I wasn't as confused by that scene as you appeared to be, because when Tyrell says, "I know your little secret," like, I just watched season 1, and in the context of season 1, where that scene was originally placed, I believe he was talking about the fact that Elliot was responsible for blaming what's his face, the other CTO guy.
Terry Colby.
His name's Terry Colby, yeah. And that's what he means by dirty little secret. So it's basically just a rehash of something that happened in season 1. So I don't think it has implications for the story going forward.
Yeah. When I thought about it more, I was like, that was probably what it was. But that's actually not what I was most confused about. What I was most confused about is the whole scene after the car, where it's like, where Elliot, Mr. Robot's like, "It's not what's in front of you, it's what's above you." And yes, I know they showed us on the previously on that Tyrell ends up repeating that to Joanna Wellick. But what the hell is he talking about? It's above you. That's more the thing that I was confused about more than the part about them being in the car.
Well, for me, and maybe this is me being cynical again, I just saw that as bad writing. I just saw that as them being pretentious and like, lackluster.
I think there's probably something. I don't know if that's true.
And the other thing I wanted to talk about with the Tyrell, we'll talk about the stage 2 revelation. Because, and more particularly, if that was satisfying. Because to me, as soon as they revealed it, I was like, "Oh, well, I should have seen it coming." Because again, they're copying Fight Club. Like, the season 1 revelation was to copy Fight Club. In the season 2, this is Project Mayhem, and I know a lot of other people are pointing this out, because in Fight Club, they didn't hack; they physically destroyed buildings in order to destroy the record, and that's what they're doing here. They're physically destroying buildings so they can destroy paper records. And I was like, well, they're just doing Fight Club again.
Yeah, it's been years since I've seen Fight Club, so I didn't make that connection. But now that you mention it, that is true. And you had pointed out, several episodes ago in your reviews that because of what happened in season 1, where Mr. Robot was going to kill people, and Elliot was freaking out, like, no, we can't do that. That logically, that means Mr. Robot's probably going to do something that's going to kill a bunch of people. That's why he's keeping it from Elliot. And when you said that, I was like, yeah, I think that you're absolutely right on that. So that was a very good point. And so I did think that once you said that, I did think that's where we're going. And Mr. Robot was probably going to do something that was going to cause the deaths of a bunch of people, and that's why he's keeping it from Elliot. So yeah, I didn't know, the paper record thing I didn't think of, but the fact that it was going to involve a lot of deaths. And I also want to point out that this was foreshadowed, and it also like kind of shows you that there's a piece of Elliot that wants this to happen, because remember he had that weird dream. I think it was that episode 4 or something. I forget what episode it was with where they're playing the slow version of Basket Case by Green Day, and which I've also heard pointed out that the song goes, "Do you have the time?" And that ends up being the last line of the season, which is a nice little Easter egg. But,
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. But anyway, in that little fantasy that he has, the E-Corps building comes crumbling down.
I forgot about that. Oh, that's interesting. That was probably his subconscious, like telling him that's what Mr. Robot's hope was. So that got incorporated into the dream.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah, and I think if we go back and watch the second season, much as when you went back and watched the first season, you might notice a lot of little things like that were foreshadowing things. But so that was. So, that was kind of cool. And I know, let's see if I don't see Cardinal Doomsday making any comments on this yet, but I saw that he made comments on both my channel and your channel saying that he hated the paper. He was like, really? That's it?
I've seen that expressed a lot over the internet, actually.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. I mean, I don't know. What were you expecting? I mean, I don't know. I think I'm fine with it personally, but I don't blame you for feeling that way. But I personally don't have a problem with it.
It didn't quite meet my expectations, but I wasn't totally disappointed with it. I wasn't like, "Whoa, this totally sucks." But I don't know. Like the whole thing about expectations, like I would fight back against the argument that if I was disappointed, I was expecting too much, because I think my expectations were based off of what they showed me in the show. So if they didn't want me to expect so much, then they shouldn't have built it up so much.
Well, I was just saying the expectations just as far as how many questions were answered, because I didn't expect all the questions to be answered this season.
I mean, to be fair, I think they answered more than I thought they would, but they didn't answer the ones that I wanted them to. So that was interesting.
I wanted to address something else in the chat if I could.
Oh, there was one thing I wanted to address too, but you go first, see if it's the same thing.
Same thing. Mitch Corbin is asking about the poem Tyrell's father used to tell him.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah. I don't know what the significance of that, but I don't know if you noticed that the red wheelbarrow is the center of that poem, and the red wheelbarrow is also the name of the barbecue that Mr. Robot uses the menu for to get the decode everything.
I didn't know. Well, the other thing I was going to point out was apparently, like someone pointed out to me, I didn't notice, but in Elliot's journal when he was in prison, it had that poem on it.
Yeah, actually, I had that pointed out to me. I didn't notice it, but I had that pointed out to me as well. Yeah. So, because when the menu came up, I heard people talking about how that was in Elliot's journal. So why does this keep coming up? I don't know. It could just be, as Mark would say, just pretentious, whatever, just trying to sound cool. I would kind of lean a little bit more toward that than it having some great deeper meaning. But
I think it's just hyperbole.
Yeah, it does.
They are starting to remind me a lot of Lost in that way, of having all these things that are just there to be like pretentious and don't really have any meaning to the show.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I don't know if it's really important or not, but it does keep popping up, the red wheelbarrow theme. So I don't know.
Well, before we move on, there's one more thing I want to say about Fight Club, is because the whole Fight Club thing is, again, I think they're repeating because it was the narrator versus Tyler Durden, because Tyler wanted to kill people and the narrator didn't. And it seems like they're having that same feud. And it seems, again, very reminiscent of that. But the one thing I wanted to point out is that in the movie, they made it, when they blew up the buildings, they gave some lame excuse that nobody would be being killed. Which actually doesn't make sense. A lot of people point out as a flaw because there would be people working there at night, like security guards, but whatever. But in the novel that it was based off of, he actually did kill people. So it seems like the Mr. Robot is more following the novels thing where he's going to directly killing people by blowing up the buildings. Plus, it makes more sense. The movie didn't really make much sense. But yeah, it's the last thing I wanted to point out.
Yeah. Although, how does Elliot know that they weren't going to do it at night when there was only security people in there? There would be less people killed. I guess that wouldn't matter. He wouldn't want anybody killed.
Yeah.
And I got to do another thing in the chat, because you guys are talking about in the chat about, we're talking about back to the red wheelbarrow, that the pyro in prison is burning things in the red wheelbarrow. Technically, that was a red wagon. I think.
Oh, right, yeah.
Wagons and wheelbarrows are different. Because I did think of that too. That occurred to me too when I was like, well, technically that was a wagon, so it's not really the same thing. If you've ever done yard work, a wagon and wheelbarrow, different things. So, but that might have been like them trying to. Maybe that was supposed to tie in. I don't know, but.
All right, so now I want to go ahead and talk about each of the, because we did get some clear storylines throughout the season, and we'll have more of a second half of the season focus, but I want to talk about sort of each separate storyline, and then we can get into hash out some of our agreements or disagreements over these particular storylines. I want to start out with the Joanna Wellick storyline, because I wasn't as negative down on this as you were, and I'll first off, I'll give you my take on it. And I think based on your video, your take might be different, and we can sort of, you can tell me what you think about it. But my take on the Joanna Wellick storyline was that she started dating this bartender who was at the, the event where Tyrell, Scott Knowles' wife was murdered, and with the intention of using him to frame Scott Knowles. However, when it wasn't her plan all along that Scott Knowles would send her gifts and that she would go over there and have him beat the crap out of him. I think she incorporated, once she found out that Scott Knowles was the one sending her gifts, she incorporated that into her plan. Which is why she was so happy. She said all the gifts, this is the best, because she knew she'd be able to use this perfectly. I think originally she had more of a long-term plan to turn this guy into getting him to rat out Scott Knowles. But with the gifts, she saw an opportunity to accelerate her plan and do it quickly. That was my take on it. And I think, to me, that sort of justifies why that storyline needs to exist, is because the whole thing was about her sort of long plan. Is it that relevant to the overall story? Not really, but I think it ties up that little corner of it that was still a loose thread from season one. I don't know, what was your take on it?
Well, first of all, I don't think. Now, I want to make it clear it may not have sounded like this from what I said in my video, but I do think that Joanna Wellick intentionally started dating the bartender so that she could use him for something. But to specifically frame Scott Knowles, I don't think she had come up with that plan at all until she got to the scene where she said, "This is the greatest gift ever." Then that's when the plan came. Let's frame him. But there was actually an interview with the actress who played Joanna that she did with the Hollywood Reporter, actually did with Josh Wigler, who's one of my favorite. He does post-show recaps too. But he talks about the interview that he did with that actress where she said early on, this is like halfway through the season, where she said that she thinks Joanna is a character who likes to have foxholes, like routes of escape, like possible ways out of things. So to me, that I took that as to mean that she got that bartender. She wanted to use him for some purpose, but she didn't have a clearly formed plan yet until So even as far as saying specifically she was going to frame Scott Knowles, I don't think she had gotten there yet until that's when she said, this is the greatest gift that we've gotten. That's when she's like, we're framing Scott Knowles now. And I will reiterate that I think it's more about getting Scott Knowles than it is about getting Tyrell off. Because Tyrell still has the whole 5'9". I mean, the murder is like actually secondary. Like nobody even cares about him murdering Sharon Knowles. It's more about the 5'9" hack. So that her purpose is more like vengeful against Scott Knowles. But I don't feel like I'm not getting anything out of this, because what I'm interested in is the hack, Stage 2, Dark Army, White Rose, Philip Price. What is White Rose really up to? What is Philip Price really up to? Elliot, Mr. Robot. All of that stuff is what the main storyline, that is what the show wants you to care about. This Joanna Wellick, I mean, maybe it'll tie into it later, but what I see right now, it ties into nothing. This is just some petty revenge plot. Why do I care about Joanna Wellick wanting revenge? Her petty revenge plot. Why do I care? That has nothing to do with what I do care about in the show. It has nothing to do with what I watch this show for. So to me, it is a complete waste of time, because it has nothing to do with anything I care about in this show.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that point of view. I don't know. I'm not too sure about like that it's just to get back at Scott Knowles. I do think getting Tyrell off for the murder, I mean, even though, again, like, it is good to point out that, well, the murder's nothing compared to the 5'9" hacks, but I think that's a step in the right direction. First, she needs to get him off for the murder, and then maybe somehow try to get him off for the 5'9" hacks. I don't know. That's me just being hopeful that she has is just working her way to try to sort of get him off. But I do think, I don't know, I'm still of the mind that she had the plan to, if not frame Scott Knowles, then to frame the bartender. She had to plan to frame someone. I think she did have like a more sort of concrete plan when she started dating that bartender, because it seemed to me she was being very calculating by dating him, she's insisted on not appearing in public with him. And I think that's particularly because she knew she was going to use him down the line. And but I think whether or not she knew specifically about Scott Knowles, I think that's kind of splitting hairs. I don't think it really matters either way. But I don't know. Like, I think it served the revelation that it was Scott Knowles sending her the gifts. Like, I agree. Like, I even said this in my review. That's a bit hard to swallow. I think that was written for plot convenience. It doesn't really make that much sense for his character. Oh, I just do it to fuck with you. They try to introduce the thing with the fetus to make that his wife was pregnant when she died, to make it more palatable, but I'm still not completely buying it. But I do get the purpose it served in that episode, and I think it served its purpose well, as it actually introduced more doubt in my mind that Tyrell was real. Because when you find out that it wasn't him sending him the gifts, that it was actually Scott Knowles, and I was like, it made me think that they were building to a revelation that Tyrell was fake. And again, I guess it's a really long, drawn-out way to go about introducing doubt in your mind for that one moment. But I do think that is the purpose it served, and maybe it will serve a greater purpose going forward.
Yeah, that's way too much. That's just. I do have to address something in the chat. We got somebody new in the chat I haven't noticed before. Thug Nasty 97. Was Alf just a figment of Elliot's imagination? No, he was actually really there. That was the real Alf coming from another planet. But I assume you're just being silly by asking that question. Yeah, but anyway, let's continue.
All right. So, well, if you're ready to move on to the next storyline.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
All right, so, well, okay, here's another. I didn't realize this would be another big sort of disagreement among us, but let's talk about Angela. And yeah, I completely stand by my statement that I felt Angela's storyline was the Tyrell. Tyrell's storyline in season 1, it was hers in season 2, because I don't know. Again, if it was shorter and they didn't spend so much time on her, like listening to her motivational speeches, maybe it wouldn't bother me so much. But I think it also, the whole thing about her being an E-Corp and she's like, acting like a normal E-Corps person, yelling at her father's friends and saying, well, I'm rich, blah, blah, blah. And then we learned, I thought, that pissed me off. But when we learned it was all an act, all the way of her to get back at them, I thought, okay, now they're going somewhere with this. But then when it just had her where she just failed and gave up, I'm like, well, that seems kind of a waste. I mean, it all seems kind of a waste. And I can't really talk about this revelation with her change of character at the end of the season until I know why that is. So I can't say whether or not that's good or bad. It's interesting the way that she's totally with Dark Army now. And I do look forward to seeing her and Elliot and acting in this role. But so I'm happy with where it ended, but the whole journey I thought was a waste of time. It was kind of the same with Tyrell. Like, I'm glad where they took Tyrell eventually, but seeing all those individual scenes I thought was a waste of time. I feel the same way with Angela. And plus the whole thing with her in the fish tank, like, that was a bit too weird. Like, some people are saying it's David Lynch. I don't think it's David Lynch. I think it's Damon Lindelof. And I think there's a specific difference between Lynch and Lindelof, where Lynch is actually more artistic and Lindelof tends to be a bit more pretentious. And so I would say that scene was a bit more weird for the sake of being weird and didn't sit right with me. But those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts on the Angela storyline?
So, yeah, I mean, well, let me make the case why Angela is vastly superior to Joanna Wellick's storyline, because I heard, I listened to a podcast where they were talking about, like, the big board. And on the big board, the FBI board, they have a line from Angela draw of the Safeco, or All Safe. Sorry, Safeco is an insurance company. To All Safe. And then a line, I think they had a line drawn to her in the E-Corps. And what they were talking about is, if the FBI knew all of Angela's lines, she would have a line to F Society, because even though she wasn't directly involved, she did plant a film to sell, which helped them. And she obviously is friends with Darlene and Elliot. And then she would have
I'll just point out they did have a line between her and Elliot, though.
Yeah, okay. But they didn't have a line for her in F Society. And she did help them, even if she wasn't directly in F Society. And then a line, they of course did not have a line from her to the Dark Army, because they have no idea about that. But so if they knew about all the lines, Angela would have a line to F Society, to Dark Army, to Evil Corps. She's the only character in the show who's connected to all of those things. She is the only character in the show who's had really in-depth, long, deep conversations with both Philip Price and White Rose. She's the only character in the show. Angela, in some ways, and just in some ways, I mean, not overall, but in some ways, she's more of a central character than Elliot. Elliot's never had these conversations with Mr. Price. He got what was it, 6 minutes with White Rose? Angela got 28 minutes. So Angela's a very important character. And as far as all the stuff with the Evil Corps and the way she was acting toward her dad and all of that stuff, it was very clear that, I think that might have been over the top. She didn't need to necessarily do that, but I think a lot of it stemmed from her, lack of self-confidence and lack of faith in herself, which was demonstrated by all those, she's getting all those self-help tapes. And I agree that was a little bit too much. They didn't need to have that quite as much as they did, but it did demonstrate her lack of faith in herself, lack of self-confidence. And that's where that kind of stemmed from. But it was very clear that her plan all along was to get Evil Corps. And then when she thought she had him finally, to have that just when she went down to whatever that place was, I forget what it was called, where they were acting all creepy and they were totally against her. What was that? The Nuclear Commission or whatever, where she took her evidence.
Oh, yeah. That was another scene that was just weird.
No, but that was her. That was her. She thought she had them. She's like, I got it. All this work that I've been doing all this time, I have them now. To then find out that didn't work at all, and she was totally deflated. It made total sense why she felt so defeated, because her ultimate plan was just defeated. And now, of course, she's going to feel like, oh, I'm fucked. I got to go to the FBI now. What am I going to do? I mean, I don't. Yeah, that made total sense to me. I had no problem with that. Then as far as the scene, the weird scene with her, you know, with the little mini Angela and the fish tank and all that stuff. It definitely, you are far from the only person who thinks that was weird just for the sake of being weird. And I mean, that's a pretty common opinion. I don't necessarily agree with that, because when I saw that, I was like, this is White Rose. I thought it was very in keeping with White Rose is just a weird fucking character. He has a room with big giant clocks everywhere. I mean, that just, and once we find out it was a psychological test, he was just fucking with her head the whole time. Like, that to me was so White Rose. So I didn't think it was over the top weird. I thought it was totally in keeping with White Rose's character. I thought it fit in perfectly fine. So while I do see why people would say it was weird for the sake of being weird, I don't hold it against anyone for having that opinion. To me, it was just within something White Rose would do. So I didn't have any problem with it. So I didn't really have any problem with Angela's storyline this season.
I agree, like that it is in White Rose's character, but I think it's too much, too over the top. Like the little Angel, I can buy it. She's trying to sort of fuck with her, and there was a whole thing with the test. But the thing of like the picture frames and all that reminded me so much of Lost. Like Lost would have shit on the wall, and people, audience, oh, what does that mean? Does that mean something? It probably means nothing. It's just the writers being pretentious, and and the whole thing with the fish tank, like that really annoyed me. Like, hurry up! You gotta save the fish tank. You gotta save the fish, and the fish dies anyway, and they don't care. It's like that was just, I don't know. It was just a bridge too far. I hear what you're saying, but to me, that just went too far with it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that point of view. And I want to point out something that Mitch Corbin said, that she and Elliot are the products of something, and we did kind of get a hint of that they are the products of something bigger, that there's something else going on that happened back in the 90s with their parents. So we don't know. I don't buy any of this, like when people say, oh, they were in the Dark Army. Like, I don't think no. I think that's going a bit too far, but I do think that there is some key to their past, and I do think that Elliot and her were the products of something, and it is entirely possible that White Rose has been aware of them for a very long time, because it's entirely possible that he was aware of their parents for whatever reason. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it's possible. So I do think they were the products of something.
Well, I mean, I'll just close by explaining more about what I mean by it's like Tyrell Wellick's storyline of season 1, because Tyrell's storyline in season 1, like it ultimately ended with him like being disenfranchised by E Corp and him like having a huge falling out. Like he totally had all his hopes and dreams dashed, and so that turned to him wanting to help Elliot take them down. And for that, I think that you need that for the story. I think that was awesome, and that's what led Tyrell to being such an important character in season 2, and I think they used him very well in season 2. However, for the majority of the seasons, all the crap with him beating the homeless and having sex with another guy was all sort of a waste of time, pointless, and was bringing this season down. And that's exactly what I think of Angela's storyline. I agree with her importance. I agree that she's important. I can't wait to see what they do with her in season 3. But the majority of her storyline was a waste of time, and that's how I feel.
Yeah, well, I've said what I feel. I'll just say, we'll just say agree to disagree, because I didn't see it that way. But and Mark, I'm really gonna have to take a very quick trip to the restroom. I'm not gonna wait until we're done. So if you want to keep the people entertained, I'll be right back.
Cool. So anyone in the chat have anything they want to talk about? Okay, so Mitch Corbin says, dude, they have a test like that, and the time limits are killer. Oh, you guys talking about other things, joining in the conversation late. There's a bit of a lag, so by the time you ask questions, Afkin will probably be back. But if you have any questions you want to ask me, let's see. If White Rose gives you 28 minutes, you know you're important. Yeah, that was interesting. And how White Rose decided not to kill Angela. That's another little interesting point about it, is because he's, his take was, but here's the thing that has me questioning, and there's too many threads left open that bothered me, is why is White Rose mentioned the reason why he didn't kill Angela is because Price, she was so important to Price. We still don't know why she was so important to Price, because I thought it was just a matter of using her to get the plant operational again, which he did. But apparently White Rose thinks that there's more to Price's obsession with Angela than just that. And that is what I don't get.
All right, I'm back.
Cool. All right. I was rambling on a bit. So let's move on to another storyline. Let's move on to I bunched them together, but Price and White Rose. And I was talking about Tyrell in season 1, how that was disappointing. And I think Price was a much interesting E-Corp character to follow in season 2. So I do, there were times I think they sort of dragged him out a bit too long. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of the Price White Rose stuff went way over my head, all the specifics of the economics and stuff. So I just trust that it will have something important to the story overall. But overall, I did like how they expanded upon these characters this season. Maybe it wasn't all great, but I do think it was good. It worked for the season.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I liked how they expanded on both of these characters. And there is still some, I don't know. I've looked up some things, and I've listened to other podcasts and other people's. So I've gotten a little bit more information on some of the stuff that they're talking about, the specifics, but there's still some of it that's over my head. But I really like the big chess match between these two characters, the Minister Zhang or whatever his name is, because this is what Price sees. Yeah. I don't believe that Price knows about White Rose, the female persona. Price sees Minister Zhang, but the two opposing, and you could say they're order and chaos. And I've heard that this is a little too much, a little too. I don't know if you would say cliche, the two big masterminds duking it out, but I like it. I think it's really interesting, and especially not knowing what either of their really true master plans are. They each have their own agendas, and they're kind of having to work together, but ultimately they're working against each other at the same time. I find the whole thing fascinating, and I also love, both characters, the actors that played them, and the way they played on screen. So I really enjoyed White Rose and Philip Price scenes this year.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that they actually appear to, especially at the start of the season, have an alliance. They're working together, and see, that's what confused me, the dynamic they seem to be working in junction. Even Minister Jung or White Rose even gave Price all this ridiculous amount of bailout money just to keep that plant open. So they have this weird relationship which I think deteriorated towards the end of the season. But it's also interesting that this whole entire time, Minister Jung is also White Rose, who is working behind the scenes to take down E-Corp, which Price isn't aware of. So I think at the moment, I still don't have a firm grasp on the whole dynamic until it's revealed what White Rose's ultimate plan is. But so far, I do think it worked well for the season.
Yeah, well, they do. There are areas when their goals align, and that has to do with this plant. But even when Philip Price threatened to close down the plant, he basically said, I'm willing to, essentially what Mr. Robot was willing to do at the end of season 2, I'm willing to sacrifice myself to see you lose, Mr. Robot was more I'm willing to sacrifice myself to see this plan go forward. But Price said to White Rose, I'm willing to sacrifice, some of my own interests just to see you lose. So they do have common interest in this plant. Whatever the hell it is, they both have a common interest in that. But at the same time, they both have interests beyond that, and those interests that are beyond that plant are opposing. and they're completely. And I'm really convinced that when Philip Price said, "I'm not the most powerful man in the room in every room," I think he was referring to Minister Zhang / White Rose as one of the people who's more powerful than him.
Kerbu in the chat says Price knows about White Rose because he said there was one room he wasn't the most powerful in, and then corrected himself by saying 2 with a chuckle. So thinking that 2, one being White Rose and the other being Minister Zhang. I'm not sure if I agree with that reasoning. I mean, it's possible, sure, but I think he was just thinking of another person. I don't think Minister Zhang is the only person in the world who is more powerful than Price.
And I suppose it's possible he knows about White Rose, but I would be surprised because there has been zero evidence that he does.
Maybe he knows that Minister Zhang has a female personality, but I doubt that he knows that he's like the head of Dark Army who's working with F Society to bring down E Corp.
Yeah, that could be possible. Yeah. And Thug Nasty 97 says the ending with White Rose and Price in season 7 led to nothing. I don't agree with that. We don't have the ultimate outcome of that yet. But I thought it was a good setup for season 2, honestly.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to say that about the post-credit scene in season 2, which it leads me to believe that this is going to lead to a whole storyline in season 2 with Leon and Trenton and Mobley, that he isn't simply just going to kill him right away, because the post-credit scene in season 1 led to a whole storyline with Price and Minister Zhang, because that's where it all started. It wasn't really present in season 1 until that post-credit scene. So I think it served that purpose in introducing us to this whole storyline.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever, I don't know if we want to get into the Mobley stuff yet, but I have a theory to throw out there for you.
We'll get to that a little later.
All right, I'll keep that in the back of my mind. I'll throw it out there.
I just want to point out that Mitch Corbin says Littlefinger and Varys, like comparing Littlefinger and Varys dynamic to Price and Minister Zhang, and I like that. I think because I said earlier I thought that White Rose was pretty much the Littlefinger character of this show, and it would be interesting to put like Price in the role of Varys. I don't know exactly, but they had that same similar dynamic.
Yeah, I don't think Varys is as powerful as either one of Price or White Rose.
Oh, really?
I don't think Varys has as much influences.
Not outwardly, but he does a lot more behind the scenes.
Yeah. But it is a similar dynamic. I do agree with that. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's talk about the next storyline on my list, which Dom DiPiero. So I said in my review of the finale that I think I see why we spent a lot of time with her, because we needed to understand this character, get her fleshed out, because that ending where she meets up with Darlene, it was so important to know like who she was, and I think it totally paid off. And just seeing the battle of wits between them, because they were both like really smart people who like it was a great chess match. Like every move, the other one had a great counter move. Like I especially loved when Dom just laughed in Darlene's face after she had that whole thing about, I'm not saying shit. That was like, this just showed how great she was at doing this. That being said, again, I'm going to say we got way too many scenes with her, especially like I talked about the Alexa thing, but there was also the thing with her going into the shop owner, the guy's shop is getting down. It's like, yeah, the 5'9" hacks cause poverty. We get it. We don't really, this is too much information. So I like that we got to know her, but I think they took it too far. Like pretty much everything in the season, I think they stretched it out too long.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with that overall statement that everything in the season was taken, but I do agree with Dom. And she had a very abrupt introduction. It was the first time we saw her was in the shop with the I don't know I forget if it was Iranian or Iraqi.
I think he's Iranian. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember, but that was it was just so random and out of nowhere, because we had never seen this character before, unless you had watched the preseason promos where you saw her in those. So otherwise, you've never seen this character before, and all of a sudden, like, what is this random woman buying a sandwich at like rambling on and being annoying, and like, what does this have to do with anything? It was just a weird introduction. It was just very abrupt. And then the next scene, you do see her go in the FBI building. And, oh, okay, she's in the FBI. And I think you might have seen Gideon.
No, she was interrogating Gideon. Like, they showed her going to the room, but we didn't get to see what he said to her.
Yeah. But which, by the way, was good. You know, when we now know that's probably how she found out about Elliot, because they never did tell us because Gideon threatened to reveal what he knew about Elliot to the FBI, and then we never actually saw it. So you kind of almost forget about it. But it does. That's what I took away from it, was that he did tell everything he knew about Elliot. That's how Elliot got up on that board in the first place. But anyway, as far as the Dom scenes go, I really enjoyed this character. I thought she was well acted, very important to the show, and a very good payoff with her and Darlene at the end of the season. But I do also agree that we did get a bit too much. The Alexa stuff, not necessary. Maybe a little bit of the stuff of her at home being lonely and depressed was necessary to kind of give us a good idea about her character, but they had way too much of it. And the sandwich shop scenes were a bit, you didn't need those. But overall, I enjoyed this character quite a lot. The actress who played her and the storyline. And this is one of my things about why I think season 2 is in a lot of ways better than season 1, because I felt like these side characters were a lot better than they were in season 1. But that's my opinion.
They explored the side characters more in season 2.
Yeah. Which they should. So overall, I think I pretty much agree with you. I like Dom's character and storyline a lot, but there was some stuff that didn't need to be there.
Well, I did want to say, like, there's a podcast that I think that we both, I started watching recently that we both watched. I had this theory about Dom being like having an old relationship with Darlene, and his reasoning for it was pretty sound, but I did not like that theory. And I was actually really glad when I saw that they didn't do that way, because that seemed a bit ridiculous to me. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that theory either. I didn't think it was impossible, because part of the reasoning was that they, when Dom mentioned where she grew up, like, I guess there are several Washington towns. There's more than one Washington Township in New Jersey, apparently, but one of them is really close to wherever Dom said she grew up. So they could have lived close together. But I didn't never thought that theory was going to happen, and I don't know if I would have liked it if they. I mean, in some ways, it could have been interesting if they pulled it off right, but I'm overall glad that that's not what they were doing.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Okay, so let's move on to Darlene and F Society. So Trenton, Mobley, Darlene, let's talk about all of them. And for me, I would say this is the one storyline this season that I felt didn't have too many unnecessary scenes, that didn't drag on too much. I loved, maybe the stuff with the frat boys it was a bit silly, but I guess that served the point, purpose overall. But I loved the episode. Like, it seems like their storyline in particular was just showing how F Society was just going to shit, not just after the hacks, but also with Elliot not being there and in prison. And it's funny how Darlene was focusing on all these little minor things, and Tyrell sort of jokes about the whole, the leak conference call. Oh, that's a nice little touch, but that doesn't really matter. Stage 2 is what matters.
I believe he said it was cute. Yeah.
Cute. That was cute. Yeah.
That was cute.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But overall, I loved their storyline because it showed everything. It happened in a massive scale to a lot of characters, but to me, I think them in particular just showed everything crashing, everything going downhill. Like Darlene crashing, burning, and Mobley and Trenton being all freaked out and thinking that they're killing. Now again, the reveal of Romero just being shot by a stray bullet, that would seem a bit silly to me. And it's been pointed out to me that they tried to set this up in season 1 by Romero pointing out he lived in a dangerous neighborhood. But yeah, it's cool. Okay, they set it up, but it was still dumb. But it was interesting, like the whole way it played out. So yeah, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that was a bit anticlimactic, I think. Yeah, really? That's yeah. But the result of it was interesting that they, how Dom was like, you all just scurried like rats, and we couldn't have done any better ourselves to get you guys to scurry. But they could have, the show probably could have done that in a better way. Than I thought. It was a little weird. But as far as the storyline itself, overall, I do agree with you. And still, that 8th episode is one of my favorites, and the only episode in the series without Elliot, and they pulled it off somehow. I mean, it was really interesting seeing Darlene's, and I hope they do get back to this and explore this a little more, like how she really went into the dark side. And to me, and not everybody read it this way, but to me, it looked pretty clear that Darlene had never killed anybody before. She even said that she had always thought that when the moment came to kill Susan Jacobs, she wouldn't be able to do it. There would be something stopping her, and then nothing stopped her, and she did it. So, like, to see her kind of going down that dark side, I found was very interesting, and her character just became so much more interesting this season. And I do hope they kind of explore that a little bit more.
It's going to be great seeing her with the Piero. I totally agree. I loved what they did with her character this season, and I totally bought the way she killed Susan Jacobs. I don't. She was not like a killer, but it's just something that just happened and surprised her. So, yeah, I totally bought everything. And I did point this out in my video. I thought it was interesting that DePiero still has no idea about that. The puppy incinerator guy wasn't on the board, so she has no idea he exists. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, even though Darlene used Susan Jacobs' e-coin to pay the guy at the puppy incinerator.
Oh, right.
So that seemed pretty stupid at the time. So I'm surprised DiPiero hasn't figured that out yet.
Maybe she will down the line. That is interesting.
But as far as, can we get into Mobley and Trenton and the?
Sure. Go ahead.
The post-credit scene, which, by the way, I didn't address the post-credit scene in my review. Yes, I have seen it several times. You can stop leaving comments. You didn't do the post-credit scene. Yes, okay. So I have seen it. So I wanted to throw out a theory that I heard. I actually think it's flawed, so I don't totally buy it. but it's interesting. Like the Leon is not going to kill them, and I don't think he will either. Anyway, because then what's the point? But that the Dark Army is interested in Trenton's find that she's found a way to undo the hack, and basically what that is that they didn't delete all the files; they just decrypted them to the point where it would be impossible to ever, undo it. So, but Trenton apparently has found a way to undo the decrypting that they did. And the Dark Army is interested in this because White Rose's long game actually is to take down E-Core completely, burn down the paper records, everything, just take them down, and then be like, okay, you're now in a, as Minister Zhang, like, you're now in such a low point, and now you can't ever pay us back all the money that we gave you. So now we're just going to take over E-Core. E-Core belongs to us now. And then they decrypt everything, and now E-Core is as powerful as it was before, but now China and Minister Zhang owns E-Core. So
I think that's actually a really good theory.
Yeah, I like it too. The only thing that bugs me about it is, would White Rose do that without a sure way to decrypt it? Like, would they need Trenton? Like, it seems unlikely that they would make that plan without already having a plan to, undo the decrypting. once it was all set. But maybe their plan didn't work, and maybe Trenton has a better idea. I don't know. So, but that could be.
I think maybe it wasn't their plan all along. Maybe White Rose's original plan was simply to take down E-Corp, but when they found out there's a way to undo it, maybe they came up with another plan to take over E-Corp.
Yeah, so I mean, I do actually like that theory. I think that's a possible. That might be interesting. So it could be that they actually Dark Army captures Mobley and Trenton and keeps them, until they're ready, because they don't want them to do that too soon. They wouldn't, so they might want to use them so when the time comes, they can then undo the hack. So they have E-Core in their possession, and then they can undo the hack. So that could be a possibility.
Yeah, either way, I don't think that Leon's simply just going to kill Mobley.
Yeah, that would kind of be pointless.
Yeah, exactly.
You may as well have just killed off Mobley and Trenton before.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it will lead to a nice little storyline, and it'll be a way to keep Leon in the show, because I thought that we wouldn't really see him again, but I like how they're sort of bringing him back.
And I like that character a lot, so it would be interesting to see him. It would be interesting to see him in a different context. Is he going to be befriend Mobley and Trenton and talk about Seinfeld? Or is he maybe he's moved on to another show? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Was moved on to Friends now or something? I don't know.
Yeah, that would be cool. I think I would like that. And then, well, knowing the show, I do think that they are going to drag out their storyline, and we'll get more of it. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, I don't think it will be as simple as him simply killing them, because why introduce it? And the other thing I wanted to point out is I'm surprised how many reviews and podcasts I listened to where they're like, oh, I deduced that they're in Arizona because that shop, it looks just like Arizona, and because of the way you can see it. And I was like, Mobley mentioned he was going to Arizona before. You don't have to do any deducing. He said he had a friend in Arizona.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's pretty obvious. Yeah. People point out Fry's Electronics is in there. I mean, I think it's also in California too.
Yeah, it's all apparently it has a different logo or different shape in California than it does in Arizona. Right. So that's why they were deducing it was Arizona, not California.
Yeah, but he said he was going to Arizona. That's what he said. That's not anything. Great job, Sherlock. I mean, great detective work. I mean, he said that's where he said he was going. It's not any big mystery.
And they said he had a friend there, and I loved how they followed up on that with Trenton saying, "Oh, your friend's creepy. I can't stand him."
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's finally tackle the big one, the big storyline, which we've of course talked about a lot already, but let's talk about Elliot and Mr. Robot and their whole storyline this season. Overall, I did like it. I do think when I said that all the scenes with them fighting that's a bit hyperbole. It wasn't all a waste of time. I just, like everything else this season, I did think it dragged out too much. Like we talked about the chess thing and the Alf thing. But I do like that they did address, because you're right. At the end of the season one, we didn't actually get any interactions between Elliot and Mr. Robot, because he didn't find out about Mr. Robot till the very end of season one. So it was good seeing how there was a conflict between them. And it is interesting that in retrospect, you look at it, the whole truce they apparently came to was just a way of Mr. Robot trying to just placate Elliot and keep him under control, under wraps. But I do strongly still believe that because of his experiences in prison and his experiences with Krista and making peace with his mother, that he is asserting more control over Mr. Robot, because I strongly believe that if he was that Mr. Robot's intention and the second half of the season, once they got out of jail, was to completely take over Elliot and have Elliot away, which is why he was shocked when Elliot appeared. He's like, Elliot, what are you doing here? And he tried to play that off later as, blah, 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 make up some bullshit excuse, which I don't buy for a second. I think if Mr. Robot had his druthers, he would have been control the whole time. It would have been another 3-day blackout like what happened when the 5-9 hacks. And I think the fact that Elliot reinserted himself, it brings up a new interesting dynamic. And I love the whole, I hadn't talked about this yet, but another one of my favorite moments I absolutely loved was the whole lucid dreaming sequence with the mind awake, body asleep in the way. I actually wish they would have played on that a bit more than they had. But I love that. And I want to see more of that in season 3. So yeah, what was your take on this?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with your theory there. You came up with it first, and I hadn't really thought of it before you said it, but I definitely think it's the best theory that I've heard in regards to what was happening in episode 9 there. I think that's absolutely true. However, you're going to have to accept that this thing is going to be drawn out, because if Elliot completely takes over, show over. Like,
yes, that is true.
I mean, so I wasn't disappointed that we didn't get more on that this season, because like you can't go too far on that storyline. If Elliot completely gets rid of Mr. Robot or takes control, then show over. So I mean, so this is going to be dragged out. But I do absolutely agree with you. I think that is what's going on, and I love it. I like that if that is what's going on, I like that's the direction they're going. I like Elliot being able to insert himself a little more and mind awake, body asleep. That's Cardinal Doomsday says, yeah, more mind awake, body asleep. I could just go mind awake, body. But yeah, but I love that too.
I wonder though if Mr. Robot still isn't aware of it, so maybe Elliot will be able to use that tactic again in the future.
I think so. I don't think Mr. Robot was aware of it. I heard you say in your review that there were people who thought I didn't have actually heard anybody say this, but you said that there were people who thought Mr. Robot was just faking or whatever. Absolutely not. He truly did not know what was going on. I think that's pretty clear that he really didn't see Elliot or know Elliot was, and he still doesn't know about this. So I do think that this is a card that Elliot is going to play again and be able to use this against Mr. Robot in season 3. So I'm looking forward to it. I do think that we're going to see Elliot get even a little bit more control, not total control, because again, show over. Yeah. but a little bit more control in season 3. So I'm really looking forward.
I think there is a way for Elliot to get more control, almost total control without the show. I think the show might not necessarily be over if he gets total control, but that is sort of an end game sort of thing. Does need to happen towards the end. So if we're going 4 or 5 seasons, it'd be like the end of season 4 or something like that. But yeah, I did like this sort of dynamics. And another thing I wanted to point out is before I watched the finale, I watched like the Emmys, because Rami Malek won Best Actor at the Emmys, and they had this sort of after show interview with like a lot of the media where he's answering questions, and someone asked the question of him, it's like, can you give a 1-word, 2-word just 1 or 2 words about what your character is going to be like in season 3. And he got like really pissed off. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. How dare you ask? What the fuck? Maybe I'm not even alive in season 3. And that really puzzled me at first. I'm like, why would he have a reaction like that? Until we saw the finale and saw that he was shot. And it's like, oh, that's why he reacted that way. He probably forgot the fact that the audience actually hadn't seen that episode yet and didn't know. So it seems like they were almost leading us to a Jon Snow type, is he dead, is he not? But I think the phone call from Angela sort of gave away that he's still alive.
I don't think that they were doing a Jon Snow thing because of the phone call. Like, I think if it had just ended there, then it's a Jon Snow thing. But I think the phone call does reveal that he's alive, and I was happy for it. I was happy that we got.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be like, oh, could he be dead?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I didn't want that. So I'm glad that we did get that confirmation that he is still alive.
But it did seem like the actor was still like he wants that doubt to be there, like he doesn't want.
Oh, come on! There's
exactly.
If Elliot is dead, then there's no show.
Exactly. I'm like, yeah. Oh no, he might be dead. Oh, come on, that's ridiculous. That's much worse than the Jon Snow thing. At least with Jon Snow, there's other characters in Game of Thrones. Mr. Robot is about Mr. Robot.
Yeah,
you can't have a show without.
And in Game of Thrones, they have killed off Ned Stark. They've killed off Robb Stark. I mean, they kill off major characters, especially Stark-related characters. So it wouldn't have been unprecedented to kill off Jon Snow, but Mr. Robot's a whole different thing. You're going to kill off Elliot, show over. I mean, there is no show. That's so stupid. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we kind of touched on this a lot already, but just to finish off with any thoughts on where we think season 3 might be going, or where we hope season 3 might go.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about some of the things that I want to see. I'm looking forward to seeing that I want to see. I want to see, I want to see the resolution for, or what happened with Angela and White Rose. And again, just to set my expectations from the beginning, the way season 2 went, we probably won't get to find out what White Rose said to Angela until the finale of season 3. I don't think we're I don't think we're gonna get it episode 1. No, I think we're just gonna see Angela acting weird and working with the Dark Army. But I want to know that. I want to know a little bit more. I think that we might get a little bit more on the 3 days. I don't know if we'll ever 3 missing days. I don't know if we'll ever see a lot of stuff. But I think there's a little bit more to be told there. We didn't talk about it, but there's the thing where Tyrell said, I love him. So, and we do know that Tyrell can go both ways as far as sexuality. So there's a theory that he generally did fall in love with Elliot, more with the Mr. Robot persona, and more about because here's a guy who can make me a god and has so much power, and he's just enamored with this. So there might have been something, and there's even a theory, well, maybe Mr. Robot was taking advantage of that maybe they made out there those 3 missing days. Who knows? Because Mr. Robot would have just done whatever it took to manipulate Tyrell. So I mean, there's that. So there might be some things from those 3 missing days we could still see, and definitely what I'm really looking forward to is. Again, I don't know if we get a complete resolution by season 3, but a little more information on what White Rose and Philip Price are up to. I do want to see an answer to the Washington Township in season 3. I do want to know that, because because that doesn't have to be an end game thing. You can give us that revelation and then expand on it in subsequent seasons. So, I do want to see that, and well, first and foremost, I want to see where's Mr. Robot and Elliot's relationship go from here. And I do think that what we were just talking about could happen with Elliot gaining even more control and maybe more mind awake, body asleep kind of stuff. And I think there's a potential for some really interesting things to happen there. So that's kind of probably the thing. Elliot is the focus of the show. So that's probably number 1 on my list as far as what I really I would like to see more really interesting, interactions between those 2 characters. I want to see that go to the next level.
Yeah, for me, first and foremost, what I hope to see in season 3 is more succinct storytelling. And I think they have the opportunity to do it, because I think they're in a place now where they can springboard into a lot of stuff. Like if they spend a lot of time like developing this again, getting into the conflict of Elliot and Mr. Robot, which they're going to have to because that conflict is even bigger than ever. And I'm going to actually love it at the stage they're at now and exploring more that Elliot actually has more control over. So I want to see Elliot learn more about what Mr. Robot's up to. And personally, I do really hope to see actual like flashbacks to the 3 missing days. I think that would be absolutely awesome. But it depends if it's going to be relevant for the story going forward. But I think it could be because I think there's still a lot about those 3 days we don't know. And I had mentioned in my video, like the whole, I think some people might be, like I think I read some theories and some people talking that they think that the explosions, the building blowing up is going to happen. One person even said it's going to happen in between seasons. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to happen until the end of season 3 because Tyrell mentioned that there's still a couple of weeks before they get all the paper into the building. So they're not going to blow it up.
I think he said a month.
Yeah, he said like 3 weeks to a month. Yeah. Like, I think, it was either 21 days or a month or something like that. But yeah. So I do think they are, especially at the pace they're going at, that they are definitely going to save it till the end. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that they could play that very well and save the aftermath of the building till season 4. I do understand that they can't blow through the storyline too quickly, but I would like to see less of the Alexa and fucking Angela listening to motivational type scenes. They can have character building scenes like the stuff we had with Mr. Robot and Elliot, but not the chess thing because that's too much when we already had it. So so a bit less of that, a bit more succinct storytelling, but I think they can still drag things out and make me happy at the same time. Because I understand that they can't blow through the storyline. So even if they save the reveal of the Washington Township plant until season 4, I'd rather they not. But if they did it in a way that still kept season 3 interesting and relevant, then I'd be totally happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, they would really. To me, that's something I think we should find out about in season 3. I'm not saying 100% definitely it's going to suck if that doesn't get revealed in season 3 because you're right, they could do it in a way to make it interesting and keep us interested and engaged enough that we don't need that reveal in season 3 necessarily. That at the end of season 3 I could be like, okay, we didn't actually need that reveal yet. They could do it that way, but from where I sit right now, it seems like we should probably get that in season 3. Like, it seems weird that if we wouldn't, but who knows? We'll see how I feel at the end of season 3. And by the way, do we have any idea of we probably at this point don't have any idea when it actually is going to air? We just assuming probably sometime in July.
Yeah, it's too early. It's too early to announce it, but it has been greenlit. I wonder if they're going to allow the fact that Game of Thrones has changed its schedule to affect them, because now they would be on at the same time as Game of Thrones.
Well, I don't know. They're two different networks. I mean, there are a lot of shows on.
Well, I mean, that's what they conflict, though. But they're both really popular shows, whatever. Yeah. Sometimes the really popular ones will avoid.
Well, as I've said, that would be. I said in the video that I did recently and what's coming up I would be in a situation where I'd have to do 2 shows. You do 4 or 5 shows, but I've never done more than one at the same time. Especially in this freaking summer, I want to be doing other things, and I want to be outside. But they're going to put me. If Mr. Robot comes on at the same time it did. Wait, what was that? Okay, if Mr. Robot comes on at the same time it did this year, with the schedule that Game of Thrones has for it, there's going to be like a good 4 weeks probably where they're both on at the same time.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. So I just want to address what Mitch Corbin says in the chat. Will White Rose show up to see Elliot after he's been shot? I think the answer is no. I think she is sending Angela to handle
that seems pretty clear. Yeah. I think that seems pretty clear. I think that's Angela. Now, one thing I also wonder about those 3 missing days is, did Elliot or Mr. Robot see White Rose during that time? Because White Rose said, basically, I'm never going to see you again.
Yeah, but it's obvious they had like more dealings with the Dark Army because they set up this whole thing. And
White that doesn't Rose mean he saw White It
Yeah,
doesn't mean
no,
he actually
that's
saw
true.
White Rose in person.
That is true. That is true. But it's a possibility. I think
Colonel
it's definitely
Doomsday says, "Who's laughing in the background acting?" That is not on my end.
That's
I'm
on my
guessing that's
end.
on that's what Mark said.
This is because I usually don't do these discussion videos during my weekend, because when we do it on Sunday in the States, it's Monday for me. So the downside of doing it on my weekend is all of my flatmates are home and will make noise in the background, so we just have to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So cool.
I'll just read Mel Soluka. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Do you think the guy at the entrance with that seems like a lab clothes was there to patch Elliot up after Tyrell shot him? No, I think he was kind of like the caretaker of that little warehouse thing. That was his main purpose. Like, he didn't know that Tyrell was going to shoot him.
Well,
like, even
no, I think the
Tyrell
question
didn't
is
even know it.
right. No, it's not. I don't think the question is that was he there for that purpose, but was he able to do that?
I mean, it's possible. I'm sure if not, he called the right people. Like,
yeah,
you know, he's called who you think I'm going to call? Fucking snake charmer. No, I'm going to call a doctor.
Oh, maybe no. I'm saying maybe it was expected that Tyrell would shoot Elliot. No, I don't think it was expected that Tyrell would shoot Elliot.
Yeah, like Tyrell didn't even know that. Like, the only person who knew it was Mr. Robot, who's just a figment of Elliot's imagination.
Yeah. So I don't think it was expected.
Yeah, cool. So all right, I know you hate to give like specific ratings or numbers, but I will say, like, I gave season 2 a 7, and I'm standing by that. Maybe I'll change my mind sometime.
Actually, I do have a number in mind.
Oh, you do? Okay, go ahead. What is your number?
Yeah, I do. My number is a bit higher. When I do my ratings, I'm not afraid to go 0.5s. I don't do.
I'm
it helps me.
of them.
Yeah. Well, it helps me differentiate from you doing your ratings. So I'm going to give it 8.5. Not quite a 9. A little higher than 8, so that's a little 1.5 higher than you. So I'm a little higher.
Yeah, well, I think it's we've already talked about that. You like the season better, and that's good. That's fine. Like, I did want to mention, like, there was this feedback show I watched where I quit because they just got too crazy with all these crazy theories about it all being inside the head, that their robots are being programmed. And this one guy was pissed off. He's like, I'm quitting the show because it wasn't revealed that they were robots. And I'm like,
that is ridiculous.
And his reasoning was that the characters such as Angela don't act like real human beings, and he's like, oh, so it's a revelation that it's just bad acting, it's bad writing. I'm like, no, it's not bad acting or writing, it's just stylized different. There are tons of shows and movies that have a different stylized sort of feel to it, and that's all it is. He's reading too much into that, but yeah, screw that. That's really dumb. So yeah, if someone refers to him, that guy that we're talking about in the lab coat, as the cheeseburger dude, but I thought he was eating. I thought he was eating like a wrap or a.
He was eating. I don't know how
or something.
Yeah, I actually don't know how this person knows this, but I heard in a review them saying that he was eating something from the Red Wheelbarrow barbecue. Which I don't know how they know that, but I mean, that would make sense. That's because they're doing this Red Wheelbarrow thing. So,
well, Cardinal Doomsday agrees with you on your rating.
I'm surprised. You seem to be very negative on that, honestly. But hey, that's cool. That's cool.
I'm actually going to go ahead and say I liked season 1 better, just because I felt it was more self-contained. But I liked it. Like, there were parts of season 2 I loved better than parts of season 1. Like, I think it had more great parts, but it also had more downsides as well. That's my overall feeling on that. All right, cool. So do you have, I think we can wrap things up now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap things up. We've been going for a couple hours.
Cool. So do you have any sort of last words on the show, or just want to plug your channel, or any last words for this video?
Yeah, no, I mean, I did a whole video where I'm plugging my channel and talking about what's coming up next. I will say that we got, you and I have some things coming up soon. Are we ready?
I'm about to get into that. Yeah,
so that's really the biggest thing that I actually have coming up in the next month is the discussions with you, Mark, and some with Don Willie and some other people as well. But My Game of Thrones season 7 predictions, I'm planning right now to start in November. So we'll see about that. But that's, so check all that out. And now your turn, Mark.
All right, cool. So yeah, I'm basically going to be doing, well, me personally, I'm going to be doing a discussion video every week for like the next month. And this actually started last week when I did my Dark Matter discussion with Josh Nana over at Geeksiders, which if you've seen Dark Matter and you haven't watched that yet, you should check that out. And then of course continue this week with Mr. Robot. Now next week is a video that Apkin alluded to in his update video, which I want to make the official announcement for now, is that next Sunday in the US, we will be doing a Game of Thrones drinking game. So I'll be joined by Akton Tamko, Don Willie, and Max of Buzz Talks, where the four of us are going to watch a random episode of Game of Thrones, and we'll play a drinking game. So every time something happens, we take a shot and we drink, and we'll have like drunken commentary while we watch the episode. So it's sort of an experimental thing I wanted to try.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Then I can just openly just drink on the air without, pretending I'm not. It would just be. I honestly actually don't really drink that much on the air, but this will be it'll be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it, and it'll just be a random episode of whenever, and yeah, I don't know if it'll play well after the fact. I think you're definitely going to have to watch along with the same episode that we choose. If you don't, you may not. It may look weird. It's just like a bunch of drunk people making it. That could be funny too. That could be funny too.
Yeah, it would be a watch along similar to what I did with Star Trek 2009, where we'll tell you when the episode starts, and at home you can have the episode ready so you can be watching it with us. So yeah, that's a sort of experiment. We had to do it on a Sunday because I know it's an odd time to do drinking, but because of my work schedule and my time difference thing, we had to do it on a Sunday.
Yeah,
which I'll be drinking at noon on Monday for me. Yeah. So I'll be drinking the day, but that's like.
And Mitch Corbin says iced tea for me, no booze on meds. You guys at home are not required to drink too. You can
you can sit back and make fun of us as we're drunk.
yeah. You guys can just watch. I mean, but it will help to watch the same episode as us, so you know what we're talking about. So that would help to watch the same episode that we watch. But you don't. By no means do you have to drink too. Yeah.
Cool. And so, the next week, this is another thing Apkin talked about, is we're going to do another Game of Thrones collaboration, just me and Apkin, talking about comparing our season 6 prediction results, which hopefully by then I'll have my video up for that, because I've been taking my sweet time doing that because I've been busy with other things. But we're going to compare our results and then get a bit into season 7, which I know is what everyone's looking forward to the most, and start talking about some of the news of season 7 breaking and our thoughts on that. And yeah, that's going to be over on Akton Tamko's channel. So the drinking game is going to be on my channel, and then the next week we'll go to Atkins for our season 6/7 prediction discussion.
Yeah, and Cardinal Doomsday says, but we're allowed, yeah? You mean allowed to drink? Yes, of course you're allowed. You're allowed to do whatever you want. So, I mean, we can't stop you. But yeah.
No, you can't drink.
Yeah. No, our cameras are spying into your homes, and we will not allow you to drink. Yeah, of course you can. You can do what you want. Just saying you don't feel obligated to drink along. Like you can't watch if you're not drinking. So yeah.
Cool. So so that's the following week. We'll do our predictions discussion, and then the week after that, I'm going to be over on Geeksiders with Josh and Anna, and joined by Don Willie, where we're going to talk about Fear of the Walking Dead season 2, which I haven't been reviewing because I was so fed up with the first half of season 2, and so we're basically probably going to rip into that episode, that show. So if you don't like Fear of the Walking Dead, join us for that. That's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to rip into that. And then the following week, we're going to be back on my channel, and I'm going to be joined by Apkin and Josh and Anna and Don Willie, and we'll be doing our time travel top 25 time travel movies, which is basically, it's not the best 25 time travel movies. We just chose 25 time travel movies that most of us has seen. So, and we're going to rate those 25 movies from worst to best.
Yeah, in fact,
collectively.
there's a couple of them on there on our list that I think are pretty bad. So it's not necessarily, it's not necessarily the best one, which makes it fun too. So we get to make fun of a couple movies.
So if you saw the one I did for comic book movies with Josh and Don and Willie not too long ago, it's the same format for that. So we're going to collectively rank it. So if one person doesn't like a certain movie, they'll ruin it for everyone. So only the movies all four of us like will make it to the top. So I've really been looking forward to that. So that's going to be in like the 22nd or 23rd of October. And then the week after that, me and Josh are going over to Don Willie's channel to do a discussion on Luke Cage season 1, which is actually coming out next week. But because of all these discussion videos and stuff, we had to push it back to the end of the month. Plus, it gives everyone time to watch the entire season, because I know not everyone like binges it in this first week. Some people like to take their time. So at the end of October, we'll do Luke Cage discussion over on Don Willie's channel. So for me, it's one discussion video per week till the end of October. So that's what I got coming on Enchantment. And I've cut back to doing 3 videos a week other than the discussion videos. So the discussion will be an additional 4th. I know Akton, like, you 3 videos a week. Oh, I cut back to it. That's probably still seems like a lot to you. But yeah, I'm trying to mainly just doing Star Trek, Game of Thrones. And speaking of Star Trek, next week, starting tomorrow actually on my channel, will be Star Trek week, where I'm so behind on all these episode requests. So I'm doing 5 episode reviews for Star Trek this week to try to get caught up and get it all out of the way. So I won't have a Game of Thrones video this week because I'm just doing Star Trek. So that's what's going on my channel. So got that out of the way. Cool. All right. So thanks everyone for watching, and make sure to subscribe and keep up with both our channels for all this jazz going on, and we will see you next time.